Welcome to the Hustle and Homes podcast, where real estate meets relentless hustle.
Welcome back to Hustlin' Homes episode 5, the show where real estate meets real talk. I'm here with Jeff, Santiago, and today we have a special guest, Mike Nikolica. And around here, we don't sugarcoat our journey. We dive into the wins, the struggles, and the hustle it takes to succeed in real estate investing. So grab a seat, tune in, and let's get started. So I guess the first question I got is, Mike, what first drew you into real estate investing?
You know what? A lot of people kind of probably answer that with reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I found a different book. I think it was called Creating Wealth. Found it at a secondhand store when I was like 18 or 19. It just all clicked. It made sense to me, and ended up buying a duplex with my buddy when I was 22 and started house hacking it before it was kind of called house hacking, and just recognized, a large portion of your income ends up going to your housing, right? So if you can kind of subsidize that with tenants and share with a roommate, you can then use the money that you were spending on rent or whatever towards buying other properties and other assets. And I know we just talked about this today with regards to identifying, a lot of people identify their homes as an asset, but in fact, by definition, it's a liability because you've got all of these expenses. When it turns into an asset, what I recognize through later reading Rich Dad Poor Dad is when it's putting cash in your pocket. So yeah, that's kind of the methodology and the reasoning that I got into it. And since then done a number of different kind of strategies. And it's
Nice. Yeah, and it is. The nice thing about investing is there's so many different avenues you can go with it, whether it's Airbnbs, flips, or rentals.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done a bunch. The long term, I'm kind of iffy about in Ontario anyways, because of just kind of the lag in the landlord, the eviction process in the event that you get some bad tenants. But, that's not to say that it's not viable in other places. And I've done Airbnbs, use the burst strategy, done flipping for the past little while. So, you got to kind of adjust to whatever suits you. So it's very kind of individualistic in terms of your goals, what strategy to use. I mean, I'm talking to people that are doing multifamilies in the States, storage, boutique hotels, pad splits, lease back options. Like there's just a million different ways to kind of make money in real estate. It's just finding what works for you. You're looking for long-term wealth growth, or are you looking for cash flow? There's a number of different things. So it comes down to you as the investor and where you're at, basically.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things that at least I'm learning anyways, right? As a new investor and joining this program is just kind of changing your thinking around money and how it works, right? And basically putting it to work for you. I kind of wish my parents had taught me that, right? They were new immigrants, very much blue collar workers. They just, you
Save your
work,
money.
you save. Exactly. You have
Pay
your
off your
house. You have your house, and don't take on any debt, anything like that, right? Whereas
It
now
was a
at least
different time. It was a different time for them,
definitely.
and there was security in owning your home, as we talked about just today and recently in some of the coaching that we're doing. Is like that money can be really considered dead money, right? Like your home paid off, that's great, and you have security, but that equity is doing nothing for you, right? And I was just talking about this last night too. Is like the difference between Canada and the States. A lot of Canadians have a lot of equity because of the hyperinflation and the growth of real estate. Whereas in the States, it's not so much, and people tend to walk away from properties if there's, some kind of shift in the economy, which again provides opportunities to kind of capture equity in downturns, right? And it's very regional. So you can have a place like Florida that's going through a downturn, but like, Vegas is booming or something, right? So there's opportunities everywhere. But I think the education piece is the most important part, is like understanding how this all works and, using debt, successfully to kind of grow your portfolio, because when that rising tide does happen, you're just, elevating your position, right? And you can achieve financial freedom pretty quickly.
Well, and I think we're kind of at that sort of interesting turning point right now, especially in Ontario, where we've seen that crazy growth, right? Until, kind of COVID hit 22, 23, that sort of thing. And now we're sort of pulling back a little bit, right? The market's correcting a little bit, where, the more savvy investor, the guy who's understanding money, this is the time where he's getting into it. He's not scared, where people were worried about the economy, that sort of thing. They're pulling out and they're looking to cash out on the decrease, and where they were buying on the increase, where everybody was all excited and going crazy, right? Which is the exact opposite of what you should be doing, where people are getting in trouble now, where, especially in Toronto, where they bought condos for 800,000, 900,000, and they won't even sell for 600,000. And it's been 3 years where they're, if they were a little bit, well, if they had the education and they understood it, they could have put that money to better use, right? Which is where, we're sort of trying to come in and, as much as we know, like I said, a lot of us are very new. Mike, you're a little bit more experienced in it, right? Which is kind of why we brought you on here to sort of pick your brain, right? And understand, I guess, some of the trials and tribulations that you've been through, right?
Yeah.
And really spread that knowledge so that people can understand and kind of get out of that mess, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
So like the cycle, there's a great book for anybody that's interested in kind of understanding a little bit more about that. It's called the Canadian Real Estate Cycle, written by Don R. Campbell. And he talks about kind of the market fundamentals that drive these things. And I mean, there's all kinds of different factors, but things like employment, unemployment, immigration, interest rates, infrastructure projects, like these sort of things that can influence the price of real estate. So understanding that and getting kind of a deeper knowledge of it, as opposed to just looking at the headlines and saying, oh my God, this market's super hot. By the time it's in the news, like you're already way past, it's like stocks, right? If you're hearing about the massive boom in Tesla, like you're already 6 months too late. So it's understanding that and like listening to, the sage advice of someone like Warren Buffett, where he talks about, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Right. So like that is, I think, a great way of looking at it, and you've hit the nail on the head in that regards. A lot of people are kind of coming in late and then, putting all their eggs in one basket, not understanding the numbers, not understanding the market fundamentals, and then they get kind of in a pinch, and then you hear about the horror stories, right? Like, oh my God, real estate's terrible, this and that. Well, no, you just had no education. You bought at the exact wrong time, right? Like when the cabbie, and no offense to cabs, my uncle is a cab driver, but when he's saying he's got 3 pre-built condos in Toronto, that's when you're kind of going like, maybe I shouldn't be buying condos, right? I don't like condos anyways. But the thing is, I think, and as we're all part of the kind of same circle, it's finding someone that's done what you want to do, and then get that coach and get that advice from them. And because like one little tidbit might make a massive difference in your strategy and basically your net worth in the end, right? So this is a long-term game. I think a lot of people nowadays are also kind of short-term thinking. You can make a lot of money doing flips. You can make a lot of money doing Airbnb arbitrage or whatever other shiny objects out there. But, the fundamentals have to be in place, and you have to be able to look at it through the lens of having multiple exit strategies. So it has to make sense, and you have to do your work, right? There's no such thing as just the easy.
Absolutely. Like when you said there, find someone that you want to do that's already done it. Reminds me of that book, The Richest Man in Babylon, where they talk about you can go to a bricklayer for information on gems. So, I mean, that's where mentors come in and make a big difference in it all. But another thing that was really making me wonder was your background. You were a police officer for a while, but you're also very techie as well with this. I know in the group you were talking about different programs that you use. So what got you looking into all that stuff? And is something you just knew for a long time, or?
So like I've always kind of been a little bit of a nerd, I guess. And, in my policing career, I ended up kind of gravitating that direction, kind of building some software and, a lot of, I guess, looking at things through a systems kind of lens, dealing with big data and kind of processing big data to kind of assess and almost underwrite things in that end. And that kind of translated well over to real estate. And then when I joined Ben's group, introduced to the high level in the CRM, I just started thinking, wow, we can really do some interesting things with this in terms of organizing and just follow up and all of that, but also building onto it. So I'm working with the team now. We're building out, scrapers and other things to kind of implement into that so that we're getting more leads. We're connecting with more private money and being able to make that marriage between, the deals and the money. so that, we can kind of be a little bit more efficient and close more deals more readily. And that's what it's all about, right? Like everything is to become a little bit more efficient and a little bit more systematic about the way we do things. And that's what I loved. What I realized that I didn't know when I really started talking to Ben was, I didn't have all the background in the business. I didn't go to business school, but I understood the fundamentals of real estate. But there's so much more to it that you don't know what you don't know and until somebody shows you, right? So all of the marketing, all of the biz dev, the sales and acquisitions portion, the multiple exit strategies, like underwriting properly, like some of those things, like once you really get granular about it, it just opens your eyes to, okay, this is a business. We need to treat it as such. And, you need a systematic way of handling all of these different things. So like creating SOPs and doing all of that. When you're bringing on team members is super important. So you can replicate things without having to really do a lot of it over and over and over again. Yeah. Then you can so I've spent a lot more time building up that side of it than I've done kind of in the trenches in terms of recently, because I've also been working on just kind of getting things done with closing up some other deals. But I think the back end work yields results later because then you can just kind of scale faster, and that's where it's kind of at now. So it's pretty exciting, to have things in play that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you really touched on too is that this is not a get rich quick scheme, right? This is a slow, gradual process to build your systems, right? Build your business so that you're able to scale up, and generate that long-term wealth. Where a lot of people are, and we've touched on it on a previous podcast as well, right? Everybody wants that quick fix. They want to take a pill to feel better, right? They want to take this to get in shape right away, especially like even now with like Ozempic and all this kind of shit, right? Everybody wants to take something where they don't have to put in the work and the effort and get the results, right? Where this is not the business for that,
Yeah,
And
I always say, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, at least like with my background, right? Because I've do consulting for cannabis industry, pharmaceutical industry, right? So I built quality management systems, SOPs, processes, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? Where people from different backgrounds and different ideas, you can really use that expertise and just kind of shift it into real estate.
Yeah, 100%. It's nice when things are transferable that way.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, real estate's relatively simple. I mean, when you boil it down, it's just not easy. And I think people get those things they confuse those things, right? Like it still is hard work and there's still a bunch of challenges and you still have to kind of know what you're doing. But the concept of it is pretty simple, right? But when you really want to scale anything in terms of a business, like you have to put in all of that other legwork. And it just goes a lot faster in terms of having a coach, I think, and as well having a community, right? So, like I can't overstate that to any of the listeners is that like being part of a group, it's not even just the coaching, it's just the rest of the group that makes a big difference, right? Because now you're getting other sets of eyes on things. You're also building trust and relationships with these people where now there's potential for joint venture partnerships or the ability to scale a lot faster through syndications, those kind of things, right? So that's what I really I just wanted to add to that, just to make things a little bit easier because it can become very overwhelming in any business. Starting off, you're like, where do I start? And I think a lot of people do tend to treat it as a hobby, right? They have one or two and they're just like burnt out immediately because there isn't systems and processes and there isn't the knowledge of how to raise private funds and how to underwrite effectively and how to manage tenants. And like, there's so many different facets, right? But to really go to the next level, I think you have to understand those things.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key pieces of the community, right? Where, one person might be stronger on the phone getting those deals, right? One person might be a little bit better with the numbers and with the finances and you're connecting your lenders with your deal finders and just kind of bringing that whole piece together, right?
100%.
And it's all about that win-win situation, right? If you find a good deal, you're making money, your lender's making money, everybody's happy, they're willing to work with you again, right? And you basically have everybody coming together on the
Yep.
same page, looking at the same thing and learning together, right? So yeah, community is huge, which is, why for us on this podcast, we want to bring some of these students on, right? Some of these folks that we're interacting with, it helps us kind of gauge, you're gauging if people are serious about it too, right? Because the ones that are more serious and are willing to put in the work, they'll hop on and they'll give their information and we'll interact and you can see, see their level of interaction and how much work they're willing to put into it, right? Because not everybody's willing to do that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those are the kinds of people that you want to surround yourself with, especially
Yeah.
if you want to grow a business.
Yep, and
Mhm.
elevating yourself through the collective too, because when you're hanging around with people that are not doing what you're doing and you're taking their counsel. And I think it was Ben that actually said that a long time ago. He's like, be careful who you take counsel from, right? So you think about it, it's like you could ask your friend about what, they should do in a legal situation, but it would be wiser to go to someone that went to law school, right?
Yeah.
It'd be wiser to go to somebody that, doesn't just have one deal under their belt. Go to the person that's done 100, right? Go seek your counsel for someone that's actually an authority and has done what you want to do. And so like by elevating your group, you inadvertently elevate yourself. And, I'm just a firm believer of just, going out there and networking with people that are, better than you. You want to be the dumbest person in the room, not the smartest. But a lot of people tend to do the opposite. They just want to feel superior in some way, and I think that that's a mistake. You want to be in rooms where people are doing tens of millions of dollars worth of deals if you've done a million, right? So I just think that brings you up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same sort of analogy like with sports too, right? You want to get better, you want to challenge yourself, play against people that are better than you.
Yeah.
Don't pick on the little teenagers or the little kids and, feel the glory. Oh, I kicked their ass. They're so good, right? If you want to improve your skill sets, like I said, you want to be surrounded by people who have done it, right? And we had touched on that before, right? Don't listen to the naysayers. Anybody who's getting into it, a lot of people, they kind of, they follow the propaganda. They hear what's on the news. They're saying, the market's going down. Now's not a good time to buy real estate.
Mhm.
What are you doing? It's not a good time to take on debt because of inflation and this and whatever it is, right? Where, you talk to somebody like Ben who's been through this, who understands the market, and what is he telling you? Now's the time.
Yeah.
It's
When it's
never a bad
equal,
time to invest and
speaking,
buy real estate. If anything, now's a great time. Now's the opportunity, not just because of where the market is, right? Also because of all the access to information and the tools we have and the AI and everything that's coming
Mhm.
down the line. Now's the time that you really want to build a business. And yeah, it's not easy, but if you understand it and you know what you're doing and you built those processes, ramping up nowadays is actually way easier than it was before, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
And now you can do your business from anywhere.
Yeah.
You can be down in Mexico on the beach, sipping a margarita, calling, making deals, getting funding, connecting the dots, and you're rocking, right? It's amazing. It's really
I
amazing what we can do nowadays.
plan on it. Next time I'm on your podcast, hopefully I'm in Mexico doing just that.
And that's one thing that we said too, right? We're kind of starting out. This one's episode 5, but it's going to be really interesting to see where we are at episode 100. It's going to be completely different. It'll
we'll
be
all
a
be
lot
sitting
more
in
legit,
Ferraris.
hopefully. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll all be streaming on the beach with, hopefully a couple of supercars in the back. Maybe just one. You don't need too many,
My
right?
license plate will say equity, EQTY.
I like it.
You got to have a goal,
So
right?
now the other thing I was wondering, you've been in this a lot longer than we have. You've been one of Ben's students for a lot longer than we have. Have you ever had those self-doubt situations where you just thought you couldn't do it, wanted to quit, go back to policing?
You know what? Yeah, in terms of like self doubt, so I'm still, for the record, still employed. The doubts of and the fear of certainty, and it's something we talked about at length over a couple of one-on-ones. It's so much mindset, and to get clear on your why has to be much stronger than your fear. You know what I mean? So, and that's a hard thing to grasp for a lot of folks, and so like your limiting beliefs will stop you from taking the actions, right? So if your why's not strong enough, your how just ain't gonna happen, right? Because there's just gonna always be something there nagging and stopping you from doing it, right? Because your self doubt gets in the way. So that's a big thing. That is an obstacle. And even despite having done like a number of deals in the last 20 years or so, it's you still kind of get stuck with it, where I get stuck with, what if this happens, what if that happens. Well, there's a lot of what ifs in life in general, but if you just don't, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So like you got to go out there with the best amount of knowledge that you've got and do it. And yeah, you're not going to be massively successful on every one. Not everyone's a grand slam, but like I'll take a single or a double all day long. And yeah, so it that limiting belief is a real thing with me and a lot of other folks. But
Yeah.
you just got to keep pressing through, right? So that is I think one of the biggest things that people have to get past and get at least be aware of. that's going to be something that's going to be a roadblock, especially if you're trying to do it alone, especially if you have no experience. And I think a lot of people, that's probably why there's a 90 some odd percent failure rate in business, right? Because the mindset isn't there first. The systems and processes aren't there. The shortcuts that a mentor or coach are going to give you are not there. So you're just ill-equipped right from the get-go. So I've had, a number of discussions about this sort of thing with different folks, and it's definitely a real thing. So, just in terms of working through that, it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of the coaching, and and if you're a certainty minded person like I am, and security, is, or sorry, for me, it's like freedom is my number one value, but
Yeah.
safety and security is a short, distance away from it. Those two things don't go together very well.
Nope.
And Ben did say that. He goes, once you escape the man-made prison that you put yourself in, right, by being employed and just having that safety, he goes, and you get out into the wild and you're just eating what you kill. He goes, you'll never want to go back to a cage to be fed, right? And I was just like, man, that's profound, right? And it's true. And there's going to be no hesitancy to go out there and kill when you're hungry, right? But so long as you've got the zookeeper dumping steaks in front of you, right? The employer is going to be doing that. There's no desire to go out and kill. But you got to burn the ships. You got to get out into the wild, whatever analogy you want, right? You got to go do that before you. So it's like the video he played, and I saw someplace else before with Steve Harvey about jumping, right? You got to jump. You need to have that faith before the evidence, whereas most of us want the evidence before the faith, right? So it's a tough thing to get out of, especially if you get a pension, especially if you got those golden handcuffs and you've got family and you got all these other things. So a lot of people will start off small, but then kind of taper off because, again, that why is not strong enough. Like that deep burning desire that's generally existential, like it has to be outside of yourself. Excuse me, like there's a reason that you're doing this that's just beyond like I want a Rolex or I want a supercar. It has to be something super strong that's going to get you up every day to make the calls, the discipline to do whatever, right? Like a lot of people want a six pack, but most people don't because it's a huge amount of work. So it can't just be I want to look good with my shirt off. It has to be something way more than that to get you to do what it is that you have to do to get into that kind of shape. Same thing with this, right? It has to be a very burning desire to achieve financial freedom or whatever it is that your goal is, because the work is very difficult. So again, simple, not easy, but if you establish that mindset first, like I'm never going to quit. I'm going to do something every day. I'm systematic about how I do things. I'm doing stuff on my money sheet, the things that are income producing activities every day. I'm getting better. I'm building my knowledge and building my skill set. I'm offering value, right? And you're just consistent, then, I think it's inevitable, right? If you do this, and this, you will get to that. It just, that's the way it works.
Yeah. And I think that's that whole idea of sort of, breaking the matrix, as Andrew Tate would say, basically, breaking that mindset, just kind of thinking outside of the box and taking some risks, right? And being, like you said, kind of being willing to sacrifice, right? Just kind of that whole idea of delayed gratification. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to sacrifice now. Like everybody wants that instant gratification. It's nice. It's comfortable. It's that quick kind of dopamine hit, right? Makes you happy in the short term. But really, what's going to give you that freedom and that happiness in the long term is sacrificing, putting in that work, delaying that, where you have the greater rewards in the end.
Yeah, that
right?
dopamine hit is not enough to keep you going.
No,
right?
definitely not.
That glance in the mirror when the lighting's just right ain't enough. It has to be something that supersedes that, because that feeling, you can't base it on feelings. You have to base it on discipline, right?
Yep.
And that discipline comes through consistent wins and celebrating those wins and going forward. But like breaking out of that is a real thing that is difficult for a lot of people, and it could be a whole 5 hours that we could talk just about mindset, right? And kind of
Definitely.
how to tackle it in that. But I definitely have struggled with it, to answer your question, Matt, because of all of, kind of the programming and the just whatever it is that's deep down inside that keeps us from, believing in ourselves or carrying on. But again, I think there's so much to be said for being around other people that are doing, and you get inspired, right? And, that little bit of inspiration leads to some action, and then you get the confidence. So like that keeps you going, but it has to be from within really to take that leap of faith to go do it. And I don't see it as risk. I see it as like I'm just simply building up more skills, like Jim Rohn talks about. It's like invest in yourself and you can have a fortune, right? Invest in your work, you can have a living. And it's like when you develop your skill set, no one's going to take that away from you. You know what I mean? Despite some bad things happening to me in the past, you know, where you get kind of chopped up a little bit. It's like no one's going to take away my abilities and my skills that I've developed, right? So it's not about earning $1 million. It's the person you become when you're a millionaire, right? It's that process that no one can take from you. So like, there's no risk in terms of what I'm doing the way I see it. Either I'm winning or I'm learning. So I might fail at something, but I don't look at it as, oh, I got to quit now. No, it's just like I learned from this, boom, on to the next thing, keep learning, growing, offering more value to the marketplace through what I'm doing. And it's an inevitability that I'm going to be successful.
See, that's where I'm stuck at, in the mindset of like right now I'm teetering. Like I want to quit my job, and it kills me because I just finished reading Millionaire Fastlane. And like
Yeah,
he's
great
saying,
book.
awesome book. Like when you're born, you get one gas tank. You don't have to refill it again. And every day, the inevitable is you're going to die. And like he said, your time is the most valuable thing. So when I'm
Yes.
at work for 8 hours a day, all I could think in my head is I'm making someone else rich. If I just sat here for 8 hours a day for myself, where would I be? And I don't know why I can't just walk in and say I'm done. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've talked to Ben about this. I've tried, reasoning. I even use Chat GPT to ask it questions. Like, benefits at work, great for my medication. But it's like, what do you do to finally make that jump? Like, I don't know if you're still working, Jeff, or not.
Yeah, still trying to land contracts, but like Ben was saying too, there's really no difference. Like I haven't really built a proper business. There's no difference being self-employed and working for somebody else, right? Where I'm, this is basically what I'm doing. I'm trying to get contracts, and it's basically working almost for a salary. It's probably even a little bit more difficult, because you do have to go out and market and sell yourself and basically convince anybody that your skill set is worth paying for, is what it is, right? So, it's not as easy as it is, and especially cannabis industry right now is taking a real dip, especially in Canada. There was that giant boom, which was nice, but now, the money's not flowing as nice as it was before, right? There's not as much investment, and these companies are not willing. They're willing to pay, but there's not as much startups starting up, which would need consultants. You know what I mean? That's really what I do, is come into these startups and build their systems and help them out and kind of guide them through building a business. So now I have a little bit of time that I'm looking to shift that into building my own business. And the only way I'm going to learn that is from people who have done it, right? People like Ben and his colleagues, and learn from them to build something for my own, right? I said, now it's time to take that risk and do it and see what happens, right?
It translates well, and I think a lot of things that stop people too is just they have life, right? They have kids, they have a wife, they have a house, they have mortgages, they have debt, they have all this stuff. And most people are not willing to be really uncomfortable by doing something like, sacrificing their primary home, downsizing that for the short term. Or like again, when you're young, starting out, and a lot of us don't have the tutelage or the mentors at that age, but it's like, if you just took those chances, so any young people that are listening, like take those chances when you're young, because it becomes a little bit more difficult when you're older and you're not just thinking about yourself. Because like I'm literally going to be moving into a 300 square foot, tiny little bachelor apartment, and I'm turning a garage into a man cave for extra living space. But I'm like going from 3,500 square foot house, a 7-figure house, to a tiny place like that so that I can have the lifestyle, right? And the cash flow from the building is going to pay for my lifestyle, and other rental properties are going to do that. And my wholesales and my wholetails and my other business is going to do that. And my trading is going to do that. Like, so there's going to be some sacrifice, but there's going to be freedom, right? So, I mean, if you can situate things so that you have less financial obligations, then you can take more chances. And what better time is than when you're living at home? You've got no bills, no debt, no kids, no wife,
Definitely.
husband, right? You can take those chances a little bit more readily. You can spend more time building your skills, right, in different things. than you can when you've got, little ones to look after. I would say make use of that time. Unfortunately, a lot of people waste a lot of time, right? And as you said, Matt, like the one thing we can't get back, the most precious resource is time. And that's really, it's not about the money. It's just about having the time to do what you want with who you want, where you want. And so if you can leverage and compress time by creating systems and doing something like, using real estate, then you can have all the time you want, right? So that should be the real objective, and the understanding is that don't waste your time, create more time.
And
Also,
money buys
speaking of
time, right?
time,
Have
I
money,
want
you
to make
buy
sure.
time. So, and that's your most precious resource, right? And that's really, I guess that's a huge advantage now is really learning and understanding how to use that money. Like I like what Ben says, basically think of them as soldiers,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? You're using this money to go out and fight and capture more money and bring in more. Where that's the rich person mentality, the wealthy person, right? They're not looking at little short-term purchases and this or that, right? A lot of them don't even they don't even have their own primary residence. They're renting from their
No.
business or something like that. They don't,
Yep.
it doesn't matter to them, right? Really, what matters to them is using the money they're bringing in to go out and make more money so that, they can afford the lifestyle and have the time to do whatever the hell they want, right? And there's not a
Yep.
lot of people who can do that.
No. And
But
that's interesting.
yeah, and that throws me off too. Like, I mean, I've talked to a lot of Americans and even people in Canada that are older than me. Like, I'm 29, and a lot of them don't even own their first home yet. I mean, bad financial decisions right out of high school or whatever, bad credit, bad debt. I mean, a lot of them are still renting, and I don't know. I don't know why that is. To me, that's just crazy why they would never have done it. Like, I guess Ontario is tough to get into a home because you got to have $1 million to get a single family home. But what's your guys' opinion on that?
Yeah, it's tough. And I would say to folks, like, there are places that are cheaper to live, and there are ways even in more expensive markets, again, like house hacking. Yeah, like the idea of that you deserve, that's where it gets messed up, where you think you deserve something, you really don't deserve anything. You earn what you put out, right? So if you put out a lot of effort and provide value, like I said, then you can live according. But you would, like Ben and even Cardone talk about, is like earn enough passive income through your business so that it'll pay for your accommodations, right?
Yeah.
It'll pay for your luxury expenses. Don't trade your time to buy those things, because you'll just be a slave forever, right? To whomever. So that's just a different fundamental shift in thinking. As a young person right now, I would say, leverage the freedom that you have to get your skills up, save your money if you can, live at home, and then do buy something with the intentions of renting out a good portion of it and have roommates, and then use the leftover money that you have to buy more assets, whatever those assets are, whether they're real estate, crypto. I mean, you really have to know what you're doing with all of these different kind of things, but you can really get ahead very, very quickly if you kind of look at it from that lens, as opposed to like getting the fancy car to impress people that, you don't care about. That don't care about you, the clothes, the kind of stupid things that we spend money on. And then you can kind of be in a position to do whatever you want while everyone else really can't, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of that's how we're brought up, right? We're brought up that that's the well, I say the American dream, the Canadian dream are very similar, right? Us and the Americans, it's a very the mentality is almost the same, but it's work hard, save, buy a house, own your house, right? And it's just that cycle of that mortgage, and just okay, if you can get a raise, your wages, that sort of thing. Whereas
But there's lifestyle creep. You just keep kind of buying more to kind of spend the money that you've got. What do you think,
exactly.
Saki? You haven't said much. As a young person, where are you sitting
Where am I sitting? Honestly,
in that whole conversation?
I like the question that Matt asked about the whole mentality thing. I think that's just one of the biggest things that I've been struggling since day one. When I met you, I thought you were pretty strong-minded. I thought I didn't really think that you had mindset problems that like deterred you from taking action and whatnot. So being able to kind of hear that really helped actually me on a personal level, because and you're talking about your why and not. So like little bit about me, like I actually lost my job due to injuries last September, so it's been over a year. And I kind of promised myself, or I've been telling myself, I don't really want to go back to a job, so I'm trying to land this first deal, but also at the same time, like I do battle a lot of the whole mental side of, quieting the noise and just grinding down and doing what you got to do and, making the calls and whatnot. Yeah, it's nice to be able to hear that, someone like you has the same struggles or or has experienced the same stuff, right? Um, it's sometimes it's a challenge to get going, but it's just fighting through the noise.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
It's being reminding yourself as to why you're doing everything, because then, again, like, I have these conversations a lot. There's a bunch of different books about it. Like, one that I can recommend that I think is awesome about self-sabotage is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. It's used to be sitting on my desk. And it's, I think it's Who Not How. A couple of these books, it just really kind of gets your head clear. But also creating like vision boards and like putting your goals up someplace where you see them every day, reiterating those things, like talking the way you speak, like not trying is kind of just a word that gives you an out. So it's being very affirmative in what you're saying. So it's like, I'm doing this every day, blah, 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 blah. Because when you start planting kind of the wrong language, your body kind of, or your actions kind of mirror what it is that you're saying. So like, there's a lot of that. It's tough because it is a struggle, and we're all struggling. We're all suffering the human condition, right? So
Yep.
it's just like the people that, like the Bens of the world have just been doing it longer. They've been reading more. They've been practicing more. They've, anybody, right? Like, we're in awe of athletes that, shoot free throws like at, a very high percentage, but we don't look at all the practice that they've done, the hundreds of thousands of shots that they've taken that they haven't, made. But that's really the difference, right? So putting in the reps, that's all that it really is, I think.
yeah, I'm just really grateful to be in a room with like all the experienced guys, right? So I'm definitely the one off on the side, just definitely trying to absorb everything and just I'm just happy that I was able to surround myself with a lot of, you guys and experienced guys that are definitely doing it. And it's I'm just grateful about that for sure.
No, but you're putting in the reps, man, so it's
Glad,
all
glad
like
to have you,
anything.
buddy.
Yeah, it's like anything, right? You're putting in the work, you're improving, you're putting in the reps, and I said it's just kind of getting past that self-doubt, right? And it's kind of even for me too, right? Like I haven't landed my first deal yet, right? I do see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's gonna happen,
Yeah.
right? It's basically just a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, it's difficult when it hasn't happened yet, right? And you're putting in that work, you're putting in that effort, and you haven't seen that result yet, but you can't just stop, right? You just got to keep going at it, keep working. And I mean, even for you, like I've seen the improvement, just on the phone and on the confidence and dealing with these people, because you're not dealing with an easy market in Arizona, right?
No,
Like some of these realtors, they're
no.
they're hard to deal with, right? So
And
I just got to kind of keep at it.
like my confidence, it does come in like waves for sure. Like I'll feel super hyped up, super confident, and then like boom, it'll just crash. And I feel like I'm going on a roller coaster with confidence. Moving forward. At the end of the day, like I just tell myself, as long as I don't quit, I know that's what we talk about. But at the end of the
That's
day, whether I'm in my highs or in my lows, like as long as we all don't quit and we just keep pushing forward, that's what it really matters at the end of the day, right? So, uh, that's my promise. I'm going to
There you
continue.
go, buddy.
Yeah,
It's the hero's journey, right? And you just got to keep going, and you take your inspiration from other folks, but also yourself. Celebrate those wins that you do have, right? That you made those 5 calls, you kept those commitments to yourself.
Yeah.
That's where confidence comes from, right? When you start violating your own commitments, then it just deflates you, right? So if you're saying you're doing 5 push-ups or 5 calls, do those things. Don't cheat yourself, right? And then you'll have more confidence. So
yeah,
yeah, a lot of us feel like imposters to start anything new, but it's just like anything else, right? Riding a bike looked daunting till you did it, and then it's like now it's second. Driving a car, now it's second nature, right? You can do it with your eyes closed. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can do it.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely. That's something that I started to really hone in on as well. Is just try to really focus in on the little wins. The little wins is kind of what I started to really try to pay attention to and just kind of hold on to them, right? Because I haven't landed a deal yet. And, if I want to see I put this much time and effort into it, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, you got nothing to show because you don't have a deal. But at the end of the day, there are a million of those little wins that you can actually focus on.
So yeah, talking about the language again, it's like something like people say they haven't got the deal yet or they haven't found it or whatever. It's you're creating it. So like there was just nothing that you could create. There wasn't a deal that was good enough for you to create, right? Like it hasn't looked good to you. Like it's more of a, I think when you start thinking about it as you're creating it, because that's really what you're doing. You're negotiating it, and for whatever reason that wasn't a good fit. In one of the calls, you were speaking to a guy, and you're just like, hey, it wasn't a good fit, but like let's talk about other ones that might come up that would be a good fit, right? And this is kind of what I'm looking for. These are the buy box. Like offer them some sort of value and build that rapport. When you start thinking about that, you're building that relationship with that individual, that realtor. You want to be memorable, and those kind of things. And then your skill set's going up because you just, maybe I didn't create the deal on this one, but I created that relationship with this guy. And I built my abilities to have better rapport with these individuals. He's just one more person that's leveled me up this much more because I learned from that call, right? And I made a little bit more leeway into this market, right? So I don't know. That's kind of just the way I'm looking at things too. It's just like not every realtor that I talk to is going to be awesome, or every home seller or every house.
Correct.
There's always going to be some issue, but like where there's all these problems, there's also profits. So like, if you start thinking about the calls that way too, it's like some of these guys are just not friendly. And if you can just turn it a little bit and now you establish something, like I had a call yesterday, same thing happened. And it's just like I turned it a little bit. He was kind of standoffish. And then it's just like, hey, this, that, and the other thing, a little tweak, and boom, he turns. And it's like now he's emailing me a bunch of listings, right? Whereas he was just like, you're just another wholesaler or whatever, right? And it's like, okay, that's a little win. Let's celebrate that, right?
Yep.
Like I'm
That was
getting better.
impressive. That was very impressive. I remember that call.
That was very impressive how you turned him around, for sure.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
And that's
so it's just that's a little win, right? You got to kind of say that, yeah, that was good, right? It may have not been perfect, but it's like it's a little bit better. And just always striving to be a little bit better than who you are today, not in comparison to where everyone else is. Because like that's the other thing that you can kind of get sidetrack on, is that you're comparing yourself to a guy like Ben who's done so many deals, or Pace Morby or Brandon Turner or whomever, right? And you're like, I haven't even done a deal. Like, what am I doing? I should just stay with my like. No, everybody started at the same level. Some people had way worse starting points, right? They have other challenges, but it's like you just trying to get better than yourself every day, right? So like that's a better gauge. And then it's not as daunting, right? Because you're not looking at all this other stuff, all that other noise. It's just like, I'm just trying to get myself 1% better every day. And imagine, right, what would happen if you were 1% better every day,
Right.
So you just got to put in that effort and compare against yesterday, like taking notes and, recording things and like looking at your stats. That's why KPIs are important. Like, and we've got that all, at our disposal with the tools we have is important. So that you can go, wow, look at the first call that I made, how terrible it was, and like look at this now where I'm at, right? I look at that, and that's why I love jujitsu. Like it's a passion of mine because it's so hard, right? Anybody that's ever done it, you just look back to the first time you got on the mats. Just getting on the mats is the hardest thing. The hardest belt is white belt because it's most people will never step on those mats because it's so daunting, right? It's not the black belt that's the hardest. And everyone looks at it the wrong way. Getting past yourself and your ego and all these other things, when you ask people like, oh, why don't you just come out? Oh, I got this shoulder like, no, it's bullshit. It's ego. And you don't want to suck at something. And it's most definitely something you're going to suck at. So it's a sport for people that like sucking at things. But like, that's this sport too. That's really a lot of things in life. You got to suck at it. And you got to be okay with sucking at it, right? And just keep getting better, right? Get past your own mindset that's stopping you from just sucking at something. That's fine. You suck at it. You're just going to get better every day. Every time you get on the mat, every time you get it, another little win, you're excited, and then you get trounced. And then you just start over, right? It's that beginner's mind. I can't remember what they call it in Japanese, but I know that Kaizen is just never-ending improvement, right? That's the strategy of Toyota, I think it was, that
Yeah.
kind of captured that. But it's that it all comes back down to mindset, right? So like that's a big thing that I think people overlook. They're so into the how do I do this, like the nitty gritty of like whatever, but it's not, that's not the most important part. It's the persistence and the grit and the willingness to kind of make mistakes and then just restart, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's
Definitely failing forward. But yeah, no, I definitely tell myself that. I remind myself daily, gotta keep pushing forward, making these calls, because every time you do make a call, you're just a little bit better and my skills get a little bit better. And that's all it is. And that's kind of why you need that persistency, right? Because, every call you learn a little bit something new or whatever. And then it's just over time, it just keeps compounding. So, make a couple calls here, there. And as long as you don't quit, eventually you'll just get to a point where you did develop that skill enough to be able to create and to negotiate a sweet deal. So definitely, that's just something that you just got to keep going.
Well, and that's where I can
Embrace
kind
the
of
suck
see,
for success.
yeah, where I see the value in this podcast as well, right? Because I mean, I'm not experienced with this, right? Santiago, Matt's a little bit more experienced with the marketing side, and his girlfriend's a real estate agent, so he already came in with a little bit more understanding than say like me or Santiago, right? But we're kind of pulling ourselves out of the comfort zone, documenting our journey, right? Improving our communication skills, and being a little bit vulnerable and showing people that, okay, you know what, we may suck at this, especially at the beginning, right? But we're looking long term, like I said,
We
by the
stuck
time we're at
together.
episode 100,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we'll have multiple deals under the belt. We've already built our portfolio and things will look a lot different from episode 1 to 100. And I think that can be inspiring to people looking to get into the game as well. Right. So
100%.
that's where I kind of see the value of this, and, hopefully bringing people on that are at different stages of the journey where you can get inspiration from and show people that, this can happen even if you don't know what the hell you're doing at the beginning, right? You just got to work at it and be consistent, and you'll see those rewards at the end.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty saying that. I'm actually glad in a way that I did start super fresh, say clean. Actually, when I went down to Sunny Sky and I got a chance to meet Mike, that was one of the things that he did tell me, was that like it's great that you're starting fresh, that you don't know anything, because a lot of people are coming and they are landlords and they're having issues with tenants and things like that, or they made a bad investment years prior and now they're like trying to deal with it or living the consequences. So that was one aspect that I didn't view it that way, and I didn't see it until you told me that when I met you. And I was like, oh, that's a great way of viewing. I'm like, okay, it's a clean slate. You're starting from zero. You're not starting from back, right? So that is something that is really cool, that, a good way of viewing it. Sorry.
Yeah,
No, it's all good.
it's awesome.
What's interesting is that these podcasts are funny because usually we start with a list of topics that we're going to go through. We get through about one or two of them. Like I'll show you. We had a list of questions here that we were going to ask you.
Well,
We
I was
literally
trying to
go
get
through.
back to it.
Yeah,
Like the challenges one. What do you find more difficult, finding deals or finding lenders? So we're already almost getting close to an hour. So
yeah, exactly. We're almost at an hour. We've been through two topics here, right? But it's interesting, right?
Honestly, at this point, like kind of neither. It's like there's the more that I've kind of gotten comfortable, the more that deals are coming my way. Like at first, I felt like an imposter. I was terrified of asking anybody about money. Now it's like I'm attracting money. So like that's a whole other thing we can kind of revisit on another I would love to come back.
Yeah, of course.
But like just how to position yourself and how to market yourself and how to build those relationships and trust, and there's a whole kind of social media is a great tool for that. But yeah, like I'm getting people kind of coming out of the woodwork saying like, hey, I'd love to partner with you. I want to know what you do, how you do it. Like I'm seeing, your success, and people from the past, and then just also people from other groups that I belong to. So the money is there. And then deal flow, it's just like the more you're talking about it, the more people are like, you should see
Yeah.
this, this deal over here. And, I've got 2 multifamilies that I'm kind of waiting on some numbers on, but an offer for a sub 2, which basically I don't even have to qualify for. I can just assume I just need to find some investors to come in, which I already have some lined up, right? So as long as the numbers work, the investors will be there. I don't even have to qualify for a mortgage. Like, it's incredible. So, and then, my private lender threw me onto a deal. And then there's another guy that I met the same day. He's got a place that he wants to get rid of. And it's just like, okay, like there are tons of deals. It's just, do they make sense? And is it the right, am I creating that right deal for myself based on my buy box and my criteria, right? And my investors. So yeah, so kind of neither, and which is probably not usually the usual, just kind of the systematic way that we're doing things. Like, I've got a VA now that's basically sourcing all kinds of different leads, and then some cold callers that are going to be qualifying and assessing motivation, and then some sales folks that are just going to be trying to negotiate the right price so that we get there. And then, just like Ben said, we're gonna have a list of them that, hey, these are the ones that we've got motivated, good rapport with the realtor, and we're gonna throw in some offers, and then just take the best ones, and then go through the exit strategies. So it's like, I don't know, it doesn't, it seems more like a time thing, and I'm working on refining that so that I've got people that can make decisions, and I've got the processes to kind of handle the deal flow. Yeah.
We really excelled there then. So what is the end goal for you? Is it still single families? Would you go to hotels, boutique hotels? What is your end
Yeah,
goal?
so I'm just looking at right now, basically using active income from wholesales, and trying to move away from flips a little bit into taking those funds and putting them into longer term, larger multifamily for the cash flow in very strategic states, and then just. And those are value adds. I might get into some new builds too. Got some connections there. So yeah, there's a bunch of different strategies to kind of you can explore. Right, it's kind of not getting too distracted by the shiny object, because like
Yeah.
pad split sound good and care home sound good and like all these different things, kind of sticking with that. And then once I'm where I want to be in terms of the cash flow, then you've got the time to really dive down into other kind of things. I really like self-storage too. I mean, like there's so many different things, but just stuff that's going to give me more time and an ability to kind of accomplish what I want.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm kind of finding it a little bit difficult too, right? Because as we start learning about different avenues of making money, and little beachfront lots that are popping up, right? Like I just saw one in Manitoba that was 80,000, but it looks like there's a big development coming in with big cottages. And if you could put multiple units on there for Airbnb, that sort of thing. Like there's RV parks that there's old timers that have held on to them forever, that they want to let go of them, right? They want to retire. Like it's just these run down hotels. Like I liked, basically what Mike Rosehart was doing, right? He's looking at these just shitty run hotels and putting in some good staff and fixing them up, and then just the margins and the cap rate and what you can potentially do, right? So it's just kind of zeroing in on one thing, focusing on
That's
that,
the thing.
and then trying to branch out afterwards is what it
Yes.
is, right? Because it's a little bit of that
Go
ADHD.
Yeah, go deep into something and get good at
Yeah.
it. Be the person in that thing, because otherwise, if you're just everything to everyone, like, you kind of end up being no one. So you
Mhm.
want to be known for something. Like in a city, I'm the guy that does multifamily or duplexes or single families, or I'm the wholesaler. I'm this, I'm that.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's just like you're frenetic and you're all over the place and you're not really doing any measurable thing to any degree.
I got one last question. So, what would some advice be for beginners starting out? What's the best advice you can give them?
Man, I would say, like, based on kind of my journey, it's do something, take some action. And the first thing is probably find somebody that has done what you want to accomplish, that has a lifestyle that you want. And, if you can, and I mean, usually those people are quite selective about their time, but if you can, get into their circle, work for them for free. I had a guy that I did jujitsu with. He's a young guy, and he's like, man, I'll work for you for free. I'll, haul junk. I'll do whatever. I just want to be, I want to see what you're doing and this and that. And I'm like, no, man, I'll pay you. You know what I mean? We're pals. But he was an engineer, electrical engineer, very smart, but very motivated. And he had that desire just to learn. But I would say, yeah, if you can't get that, then pay a coach and get somebody that, because there's nothing that you can exchange, books are great and whatever, but there's nothing that's going to be better than someone that you can kind of bounce things off of. Join a community, go to meetups, do that, and then really get focused on your mindset and your why. Really establish that, get those limiting beliefs out of the way, and like there's avenues to kind of establish that too. Anybody can reach out to me. I'm Mike Nick on Facebook, cactuscapital.ca, support at cactuscapital.ca. You can email me. We can talk about that kind of stuff. Yeah, the mindset's super important, and just be definitive about what you want to do. And then once you know that, then it's like the roadmap is, okay, find whoever it is that is the authority that's doing what you already want, and then follow their lead, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just find somebody and then start taking consistent action.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Finding someone who's done what you are looking to do, that is the ultimate life hack, or the short way of doing it, right?
Yeah. There's no substitute though. Nothing, you can't pay someone to get you the body that you want. You can't pay someone to, to get you the finances that you want. You have to kind of go through it, right? So don't cheat yourself on the process, because again, it's who you become during that process is the most important thing, because ups and downs will happen. If you entrust somebody else to do that stuff for you, I think you're cheating yourself. So like, go do it. Yeah, it's going to be struggle, but like anything worthwhile is a struggle, and it pays off in who you become.
Absolutely.
And don't listen to people who haven't done it.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Just try to keep out the noise, right? If they don't, if they're in different positions in life, and and try to ignore some of the naysayers, right?
Dream
the
stealers, that's what they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
You
that's
only get
keeping
one
that
life.
strong mindset. Absolutely.
Yep. Go for it. You got a goal, go for it. You can do it.
So we hit our hour. You guys got any other questions, Santiago, Jeff?
No, I think we're good. Like I said, it's always, I always find it funny, as we've done this a couple of times, where I was like, fuck, what the hell are we going to talk about for an hour? Especially like that first episode, right? And then, we try to keep it casual and just, bounce ideas off of each other. And, I think it's all very valuable for the listener, right? Especially as we start bringing more people on too, as we start progressing our journey, right? And bringing people in who have the same sort of mindset, and they're at different stages of their journey too, right? Because I'm learning, right? We're always learning from people who, like us, Mike, that's awesome. You're already sort of on that scale up phase, right? And we're in the beginning, and we're looking to get to that, right? So it's always awesome to kind of hear your journey, and where you've been, and the different struggles with the mentality and that sort of thing. So I think this was super valuable, and appreciate your time and coming on here. Like I said, we'll keep in touch, and we'll bring you on here as well, because we still have about 7 or 8 more questions to ask you.
Exactly. We got through 4.
It's been an honor to be on here. Thank you guys. You guys are doing great stuff, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people that get value from what you guys are offering. So thank you again for having me. And anytime anybody wants to reach out, feel free.
Follow Capital Cactus.
cactuscapital.ca, support at cactuscapital.ca. You can reach me, or Mike Nick, Nik, on Facebook.
And I'll put his links in the description as well. But other than that, thanks for tuning in to Hustlin' Homes Podcast. If you got value from today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. Share with a friend who's into real estate or looking for financial freedom. And don't forget to follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes content, deal updates, more tips to help you on your journey. We're still just getting started, and we'd love for you to be a part of the community. So keep hustling, keep building, keep closing.
Go.